What's up everyone? In today's episode we are going to do item stacking. And so we need to do this part first before we do item using or consumable items because it's going to mess with the way that we do things. So it's important that we do this part first. Alright, so what are we trying to do? Before we dig in, we need to understand what we're trying to accomplish first. So first of all, we need a max stack size. Each item is going to be stackable, and we need to create some sort of integer that sets the stack size for each item. And then we need to somehow get the amount of that specific item that we have, and then we need to split that item up if the amount of items that we have is equal to the stack size. So how do we do all of this? Well, let's start from the very beginning and let's just do some simple UI stuff. So we're going to go to our button in our inventory UI. We're going to create a text, and this is going to be our item counter. So instead of adding a new item, instead we're just going to increase this by 1. And so let's just make a number here, like 1. Let's put in the bottom right. Let's make it white. And then let's set it over here. Let's just make the width nice and small. And we're not going to care too much for it. We'll just make it slightly bigger, and that should do. And so we're going to get rid of that. We're going to call this amount. And then we're going to hit apply. And now all of our buttons are going to have amount on them. Alright, so we have some way to set the amount, or to get the amount. But we need a way to set the amount. So let's go over to our inventory slot. And let's create a public text and call this amount. And then we're simply just going to go over to our button once it updates, and we're going to see that we have amount here, and we're going to drag this in. Oh, and you're probably wondering why you have a exposed variable called item. I forgot to mention this part. So I typically, whenever I don't want to set something through the inspector, I usually hide it. Having an exposed variable that you don't want to set is very bad, because someone else might come along and set it, and then something bad's going to happen, and then you're going to wonder why, and it's going to be this little variable here. So make sure you do brackets, then do hide in inspector, and it's going to disappear from your inspector. Okay, cool. And so now we're all up to date. So now that we have our amount, we need to go over to our item base. So our item script, this is our item base, that all of our items are going to be using this item base. And so all of our items are going to be stackable. And we're going to say public integer max stack size. And you're probably wondering, like, well, what if I don't want my item to be stackable? We're going to make it not stackable by default by making the max stack size equal to 1. So whenever you make a new item, the max stack size is going to be 1, which is not stackable. Just don't make this 0, because something you might get an error or something, I don't know. I haven't tried it, and let's just not try it. So we have all of our stuff set up now. We can finally go to our inventory UI script, and we're going to be doing a lot of work here. Alright, we need to do the hard part now, which is finding out a way where we can figure out how to split the items when we reach the max stack. And so let's say we have an apple, and the max stack size is 3. And so we add 1 apple, we have 1. We add 2 apples, it goes up to 2. Then we have 3 apples, it goes up to 3. And then now when we add another apple, instead of going to 4, we're going to create a new apple and make this go up by 1, and then so on and so forth. And so how do we do that? And so basically what we need to do is figure out a way where whenever we get to 3, it resets back to 1. It goes 1, 2, 3, and goes back to 1. Or whenever it reaches the max stack size of 3, or whatever it is for any item, it goes back down to 1. Alright, so I'll show you how we're going to do that. Make a private void, actually private integer, so we're going to return an integer. And we're going to make this call get remainder. Okay, so first thing we need to know is the amount of that specific item. That's the first part. So we need to know how many apples there are in an inventory. So how do we do that? So first of all, we need to know what the item is, right? So let's say item, new item. Alright, so we access to the item in question. And now we could do this the manual way, but I'm going to show you a quick little shortcut. So we're going to be using system.link, and it's going to let us do something really cool with lists. And so you might be wondering, like, what list do we have? Well, our inventory. That's a list. So let's go over to our inventory, say inventory manager, instance, inventory. Then we're going to say count, and then usually that's where you stop. But this counts all the items, and with system.link we can use something called a lambda expression. So we do something like this, new item, and this looks really strange, I admit. But it's basically, all you need to know is that this returns the amount of new items that there are in an inventory. So now we have a variable. Let's say variable, and let's call this item count is equal to this. And so now we can call item count, and it will count the amount of items of that specific item. Cool, so what's the next part now? Now we have to return the remainder. So let's go and return, and we're going to say item count, and then we're going to use a % symbol, and this gives us the remainder. And you should probably look this up if you don't understand, but this is how we're going to reset the counter basically. And then we're going to say new item dot max stack size, and that's how we get it. And so let's do the adding part first. Okay, so we're going to, actually I'll keep this, but we're going to like move it later. So we need to say if remainder, actually I'll show you guys what remainder is spitting out first. So we're going to do debug.log, because I think it's important that you understand get remainder, what exactly is going on behind the hood. Alright, so we have our chest of harmony that we're adding, but the max stack size is 1. So we're going to make this something like 5. And it's not going to do anything, like nothing's going to change, but we're going to get the, we're going to debug the remainder. And so if I hit Q, you get 1, 2, 3, 4, and 0. So instead of going to 5, it goes back down to 0 because it hit the max stack size. And then we keep adding 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it goes back down to 0. And so now we have a way to reset the counter whenever we hit the max. And you might be thinking, well, this 0 that we're getting is kind of a, it's not, we don't really want 0. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to create a variable called remainder, or make it equal to get remainder new item. You might be wondering why we're doing this. It's because we're going to change what the remainder is whenever we get to 0. Because if we have 0, it's just going to mess things up, because we never actually have 0 of the item. And so we're going to say remainder, if remainder is equal to 0, we're going to make remainder equal to new item dot stack size. So instead of going to 0, it's going to the max. And to show you what that's like, I'm going to debug.log remainder. And so we're going to change from going to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 0. We're just going to go to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So cool, we have a way to accurately check the remaining amount and go back to the proper number. And so now we have this, you might be wondering, okay, what do we do now? We can simply say if remainder is 1, we're going to add the new item. And so we don't have to type it out, we're just going to move this over. Then we're going to say else. If it's not 1, then we're going to simply update the string. And you might be wondering, like, what string? And we're going to be updating. Remember the amount text that we made? That's what we're going to be updating. So we're going to say slots, get same slot. We're going to pass in the new item. And then we're going to make this cast this as an integer. And then we're going to say dot amount. Dot amount. Make sure it's outside the bracket. And then we're going to say the text is equal to the remainder dot toString. Alright, that's all the code we need for the adding part. Okay, I got a error here because I forgot to hit apply. So we look here, our second button, the amount text is empty. So make sure you hit apply. And you just want to double check that the amount is there. So let's do that again. And so we'll hit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And let's add a new item. And so now this works with all of our items. And so let's go over to our debug test. And instead of the chest of harmony, we're going to add the chest of healing. And the max stack size for this is 1. And so we add this, it's not going to stack at all. Let's add something else. The Blade of Fury. Let's make this stack size 10. And so let's add that. The Blade of Fury. I'm going to hit Q. And then it goes up to 10. And so now we have a way to stack our items and have it work with all of our items. So all of our items are stackable and it's going to work with all of our items. And so now there's one more thing we need to do. So we have a way to add, but what about subtracting? Now this isn't going to work. It's actually quite simple. We're kind of just doing the opposite. So we need to say, we're just going to copy this over here. And so we need to say if our remainder is 0, then we're going to say remainder is equal to new item dot stack size. So we're doing the same thing. Oops, don't put the parentheses there. So we're going to say if remainder is equal to new item dot max stack size. Then we are going to remove that item. So we're going to go over here. And then we're going to say else. So we can actually just copy paste this part, because all this does is update the amount text. And so here we're just updating the amount text. And whenever we remove the item, whenever we remove an item, we also want to get rid of the amount. So I'll show you what happens if we don't do that. So we're going to add, and then remove, and then see, the 1 is going to remain. We don't want that. So how do we get rid of that? So slots, we can actually just copy paste this part. We're just going to copy this, paste, equal to an empty string. So it's just going to make it equal to nothing. So we're going to add, then remove, and there you go. We have a way to add and remove our items and have them stack. And so let's say you want, if you want the 1 to appear, if you notice that in our example, when you add item, whenever add a new item, there's no number here. If you want a number there, some games don't have that, some games do. You simply just have to update the amount whenever you add a new item. So let's say add it here. I'll just show you real quick. So I'm going to add, and then the 1's going to appear, and add, the 1 appears again. So it depends on your personal taste. If you want the number to appear, if it's 1, then you can just add, then you just update the amount. If you don't, then just don't update the amount. So it's up to you. But that about wraps up our tutorial. And in next episode, we are going to do actually using items. I'd like to thank my Patreons, Alejandro, Kovian, Bay, Emerson, Kirijo, Polybius, and Yoan. If you want to become a Patreon, you can support me at patreon.com/devbird, where you can join my Discord, or you can just join the Discord in the link description below. And there you can suggest videos or ask me questions, and I'll see you guys next time.